Hi, guys, and welcome back to another episode of Consciousness Conversations with Jenny and Don. Today's topic is about how to deal with emotions after a breakup. And we all know that we have to let go of people. Sometimes things don't work out. So today's video is about how to deal with emotions after a breakup with a partner, a parent, or a friend. So, Don, how do you deal with emotions after a breakup? I mean, I know that before we met each other, you were single for a while. And I mean, how was that for you as a guy? Like, what is expected from society, and how do you, I don't know, just get through a breakup?
Breakups in relationships, and that relationship doesn't need to be necessarily like a love relationship. Two partners, it can also be just friendship or even a family or business relationship. It doesn't really matter, but it's completely natural thing that at some point that relationship breaks. If you look at the nature all around us, we have systems of things everywhere, and at one point after the goal is completed, the system just dissolves. Similar thing happens with relationships. All relationships are here either to help you as a person, or you need to help that other person, or you need to help, or both of you need to help each other. The main problem appears because at one point you help each other. It's enough if, for example, the case is a loving relationship. It's enough, but both partners are attached one to each other and they just cannot say no. And then that whole period appears when it's just worse and worse and worse and worse and worse until either something terrible happens or partners explode or they cheat or just something extremely negative bad happens, because naturally that should have ended months ago, years ago, but people just weren't strong to say no and to act like that.
And why do you think are people not strong enough to say no to something that's just not working anymore, to something that's not serving anymore, where you're just stuck? And what is the difference between a normal relationship and a relationship with your soulmate?
People are afraid because of comfort zone, uncertainty, habits, of course, we're beings of habits, and also because of many logistical things. Sometimes, yes, partners might live together and they're together for 5 years and they're renting an apartment and they have so many things together that it's really not practical to break up, because then all those other things would break up too. There are many reasons for that, but people usually don't like new things and they would rather stay in something familiar, even if that something is not really good for them. To answer your question about the soulmates, I believe you need to have access to higher self, you need to have access to your feelings, you need to have access to intuition to even recognize that somebody is your soulmate.
Yeah, that's I agree with that. And I mean, I know you for a little while now, and before we, well, were in a relationship, you told me that after your relationship before me, you were suppressing your emotions at first, so you were not dealing with any of that. There was a breakup, not going into detail here, that's private to the two of you, but you told me that you were not dealing with it, and then at one point it hit you and you were like facing all those suppressed emotions. So do you think that's a natural mechanism from, I don't know, your body to just respond in a way that when something happens that can hurt, that sometimes the body closes up immediately? And why do you think it's still so important to just deal with it, like feel the emotions and go through them one more time to let them go?
I believe that especially what is expected out of man is they need to be strong in this society, they need to provide, they cannot cry, and usually that's why men don't talk a lot about emotions. They don't deal with emotions and kind of that's implanted into our minds, that we just keep stuff for ourselves, that we need to be strong, and that we don't, and that we cannot be vulnerable, because if we act like that, we are perceived as bad in society. That's also, many psychologists say that that's one of the reasons why men live shorter than women, because they just don't deal with their emotions. They bury everything inside themselves until something really kills them and grows into a cancer, or all those negative emotions need to manifest somehow in the physical reality, and that is often illness. On the other side, women, they immediately after the breakup, at least in Western cultures where we are from, if they have some circles of friends to share that with, they will share that, and they will release all those emotions, and they will deal with them, and they will cry. Most men don't even want to admit they cry, or many of them even can't cry because they think that, well, men just don't cry.
So you would say, I'm sorry, you would say it's extremely important that both genders, men and women, in this case, especially men, need to learn to be vulnerable again and to show emotions. And that also means that on the other side, the women need to realize that men are also just human beings who have emotions, and that it's not a weak guy or a weak man if he, well, shows vulnerabilities.
Absolutely. Both should deal with emotions, and both should accept the fact that it's completely normal that they are sad, and they should first admit that to themselves and then to other people, because getting off their chest, that's really helpful. Even for things like, let's say we have a phone and we break it, well, we will be a bit sad. If we have a small pet such as goldfish and that goldfish dies, we'll be sad, and that's kind of acceptable. Why then it wouldn't be acceptable to be sad about a partner? Maybe you had so many things with that partner, not just a relationship, but maybe that was a high relationship like a marriage, maybe you had kids. God knows what deep could you have with that partner for years or decades. Why then it wouldn't be acceptable to be sad? That should be the saddest moment ever, or one of the saddest moments ever in your life. And that's perfectly fine. You should deal with those emotions. You should accept them. You should share them. You should talk about them. You should write about them. Potentially see a psychologist. But you should definitely, in some ways, deal with them. And when I say some ways, I mean healthy ways, which don't include alcohol, partying, or self-sabotaging, or anything connected to it.
I agree. And have you personally dealt with the pressure of hiding your emotions and hiding your thoughts and your real feelings? And do you think that is mostly because patriarchy created this world as we know it by now, and that the pressure is just so high on, well, every person, but in a different way? But in this example, on men, the pressure is so high to always be the strong, well, I'm not saying emotionless, because of course women also want to see some emotion. They want to see that you love them and everything. But do you think that the pressure at one point was almost so much that it broke you to not have the freedom to be vulnerable and show emotions as a man?
Absolutely. I mean, that's kind of a normal thing that guys do. They just break up and then they drink, which is, they never share any things about breakup or how they feel or sadness or anything. They're just like, oh, let's get drunk, which obviously does not help. Maybe it helps for 12 hours while you're drunk and hangover, but it won't help that much in the long run. More and more men are appearing who started to become more emotionally intelligent. Women are above men incomparably in that field, and more men now appear, and they are aware that they need to share their things, they need to share their thoughts, they need to share their emotions. But still, so many men believe they need to be strong, they cannot cry, they cannot be vulnerable, they just need to be that strong iron fist, otherwise they are perceived as bad.
I agree, and I really hope that this movement will develop further and bring everything into balance. And so, for our watchers, what would you say is very helpful after a breakup? Just share some tips, please. And I mean, you just mentioned already what's absolutely the opposite. That's suppressing, running away, numbing pain with alcohol, parties, drugs, maybe having one night stands. I mean, maybe at the beginning, partially, it's just you're in so much pain, you just don't know how to deal with it because you never learn anywhere unless you have extremely emotional, intelligent parents how to deal with your emotions. I haven't learned, none of my parents. I know that it was similar in your growing up, and you cannot even blame them because they also got raised that way, and they just share and teach what they have learned themselves. So it's not I'm not blaming our parents here right now. It's just the system and the education in general that is responsible for the lack of emotional intelligence. So yes, please share what helps you or what helped you in the past to deal with heavy emotions after a breakup.
First of all, I would say feeling those emotions, letting them just be without trying to bury them down or run for them, writing about them. I love journaling, that definitely helps. Talking about them either with friends or psychologists. Of course, all the other things like working out and meditation that just up levels your overall body and mind state, and then just negativity has a problem to be inside of you if your body and mind are high. Those are just some of the things. And I'm not saying that is good for everyone. People often label things as good, as bad. They might label alcohol, oh, that is so bad if you drink after a breakup and you party. But on the other hand, if that alcohol actually helped you to not commit a suicide, when then alcohol is actually a really good thing.
Yeah.
It's really hard to label things as good, as bad. It's important that people recognize in which situation are they, what can they do better. To recognize maybe some previous patterns from before and realize how can they not repeat that pattern, because it often repeats. They're in a relationship, they break up, they do some actions, usually not that good, until another relationship, and it just continues. They should recognize that pattern and they should break it. But according to their overall level of personal development, according to their situation, according to their beliefs, and all the tools that are available to them, they need to decide for themselves those actions. Personal development and going on the inside, that's always the right decision.
So, from what I'm hearing here, for the major tip that's kind of crystallizing itself out is acceptance. Just accept that you're a human being and that you have pain and pleasure feelings, that you sometimes are happy and sometimes you're sad. Because I feel that the pressure is so high to constantly be on the positive side of life, and I agree with that. I mean, your thoughts create your reality. But on the other side, how could we know what pleasure is if we have never experienced pain? How could we know what love is if we have never been betrayed? So I think if I got that right, you can correct me if not. The first step, which helps you to deal with your emotions, is that you accept having them and that you don't try to deny them or pressure yourself to not feel any of this, to get yourself out as fast as possible. Because I did that in the past. I was always trying to get out of that negative state as fast as possible. But then I realized when it's not really dealt with, it's haunting you. It's still inside of you. It's like a heavy blanket around you. But why not? I mean, when you're right now in that moment of a breakup and you're sad, it's okay to be sad. Just be sad for 1-2 weeks, and you will realize that when you really sit in that emotion and deal with it, it's also gonna pass through you, because we know that emotions are always passing through us.
I agree with everything you said. And I understand what you were doing before, how you were trying to escape that zone as fast as possible and get into that positive state. And that is something that especially highly intelligent people do. They find some philosophy that could be, for example, a stoicism, and then they use stoicism and they use their mind, their intellect, to get themselves out of their state. But when used in that way, that is just a method of self-defense and suppressing emotions. Instead of suppressing emotions with advanced philosophies, which can be extremely toxic when used in that way, we should rather focus on how to deal with emotions as fast as possible, in the healthiest way possible, how to accept that whole situation, and I'm not gonna say as fast as possible, but how to, in a healthy way, come to the state where you are just grateful for everything that happened before, where you don't have any anger inside of yourself anymore, or guilt, or any negativity connected to that event. You're just grateful that it happened. You learn the lessons, and you're moving on. You're not looking back in a negative way.
Yeah, I agree. And I would say also to reduce the pressure is just to be very patient in the process, because capitalism and our busy society is super physically material success orientated. They constantly tell you that there are quick fixes for everything. And yes, logically, if you are, I don't know, let's pick you for example, if you're coding, then you know that there is a solution and that you will find it with your mind. You will find the solution, that can be done in like a short amount of time. But in in emotional reality, it's just not like that, because emotions are something else than a logical problem where you have a logical solution for. But humans are way deeper and more complex, so I think to take pressure away, we just also need to be patient.
Yes, I agree. When you look at everything only with the mind, then you try to explain everything logically. And that is a mistake, because life is not logical. And you see that all around you. You can hear that people say, how can this happen? How can that happen? How is it possible? Because life is not logical. And if we look at life as logical, we'll have a lot of problems, because we just won't understand how many things happen. And some of them even cannot be understood by the mind. Emotions, energies, higher self is above mind. We cannot understand those things with mind. We can just understand that we cannot understand them.
Yes, and we are humans, so we love to analyze everything, especially relationships and our partners. But yeah, thank you, Dom. That was really awesome. And thank you guys for watching. So I hope you enjoyed our little talk about relationships and how to deal with breakups and emotions. If so, let me know in the comments below, and we see you next time. Bye. Woo. Okay, that's it. Let's see how long.
Awesome.
Well, I need the card. I need to